Dillian the Body Snatcher right here. It's a champ. Big up to Sporting Icon. Subscribe. Otherwise, I might pay you guys a visit.
Now, if you ask the average boxing fan today, what does Kronk mean? What is Kronk? Most people will automatically think of Sugar Hill Steward and how he's changed Tyson Fury's style from being a pure boxer to someone who comes forward looking for the knockout. But of course, if you ask more experienced boxing fans, if we can put it that way, they will certainly look at Kronk as the heyday. They will look at the late, great Manny Steward. Of course, he's the uncle of Sugar Hill Steward. Not that Sugar Hill Steward, that was his original name, it wasn't. But Manny Steward, again, students such as Lennox Lewis for a huge chunk of his career. Same with Wladimir Klitschko, Thomas the Hitman Hearns, Hector Camacho, Oliver McCall, and quite a few others. And of course, more recently, people will probably look at Sugar Hill Steward and think, okay, he's got the Kronk style. That's what it is that he's teaching Tyson Fury. This was passed down from his uncle before he died in 2012, and that's what he's passing on to Tyson Fury. He's a great trainer, all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not dismissing any of that. I think he's a very good trainer. I really do. But in truth, when you really look at it, for the Kronk style, it's more of a mentality thing than it is anything else. But at the same time, it is an aggressive form of boxing. But of course, you have to be quite clever with it. Pretty much the motto is, take it out of the judge's hands. Knock out your opponent. Don't just use the jab as a rangefinder, as a lot of fighters do. Use that jab as a weapon. Use it to sting your opponent. Now, when you look at, say, Manny Steward, of course, we can look at maybe his time with Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis, of course, he lost to Oliver McCall. Oliver McCall had Manny Steward in his corner. But on the rematch, Manny Steward wasn't with Oliver McCall, he was with Lennox Lewis. And their journey began. We all know what it is that Lennox Lewis achieved, undisputed. He's defeated every man that he's been in there in the ring with, thus being he's defeated the 2 losses in the draw that he had on his record. He'll go down as one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. Now, he's my favourite heavyweight of all time. But one person who was with Lennox Lewis from his professional debut right the way through up until his retirement was Harold the Shadow Knight. Now, Harold Knight is currently in the corner of Dillian Whyte. Now, Harold Knight is somebody who would organise a training camp and, of course, would instill certain mentalities and, of course, train pretty much at the Kronk style, i.e. Lennox Lewis. But again, Kronk style, if you look at certain fighters, you can see big differences. There's a big difference between, say, a Lennox Lewis and a Wladimir Klitschko. Wladimir Klitschko would jab, jab, hug. Jab, jab, hug. Jab, jab, throw the right hand. Lennox Lewis, not so much. He would use that jab as a weapon and follow through with a huge right. Okay, so stylistically they're very different, but that's why I was saying it's more of a mentality kind of thing. But when you go back onto, say, Sugar Hill Steward, the current trainer of Tyson Fury, people will say, well, he's passed on everything that he learned from his late great uncle. Truth is, he was only with his uncle for about 2 years. And in those 2 years, would he have picked up a few tips and tricks? Well, of course he would have. But again, how much would he really have learned? Was he just a snot-nosed kid who was sat there on the ring apron watching his uncle work as he was eating an ice cream? You don't really know. And again, his success as a trainer himself, his success really is Tyson Fury. And he's only been in his corner for 2 fights. So other fighters that you could probably mention with him could be Adonis Stevenson for a while, Charles Martin for a while. So nothing that would really stand out. And that's the truth of it. But with Shadow Knight went through pretty much the entirety of Kronk. He was learning the Kronk style, the Kronk mentality. So him being with Dillian Whyte has more Kronk in his team than Tyson Fury does. Now, will that make any kind of bearing and difference of the outcome of a fight between Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte? In some ways, maybe, but no, of course not. Okay, there's been many, many fighters who have tried the Kronk style, but just can't get it. They just can't do it. Many have tried, many have failed, and many have been through the doors in Detroit with Manny Steward and Kronk. Nassim Hamed, for example, he spent a little bit of time there. Julio Cesar Chavez, He spent a bit of time there. Quite a few other fighters have as well. But the true Kronk, Sugar Hill Steward, won't know that much about it. He'll have a very good idea, but of course his style of training and how he does things will be a little different to his uncle. It will be. But somebody who does have the same ways, or almost the same ways I should say, as Manny Steward will be Harold Knight. Now Harold Knight, as an amateur, he was a very, very good amateur, was like 103 wins with only 10 losses or something like that. As a professional, 19 wins and 1 defeat, and that 1 defeat was his last fight as a professional. But he's been around many, many other different gyms than that, of course. So Dillian Whyte, having him in his camp, is more Kronk than what Tyson Fury's got. That's the reality of it. Just because Sugar Hill is the nephew of Manny Steward doesn't mean that the soul, the spirit of the late great Manny Steward is being passed on and automatically that makes him a great trainer. No, if it wasn't for Tyson Fury, how many people would have actually heard of him? Not many. So when people talk about Kronk, Tyson Fury has Kronk Style, to a point, yes, now he does. But it's not proper Kronk. It isn't. Go ask those who's been watching boxing for a long time. They will be able to explain it far better than what I could. When you talk about Kronk, people will look at Thomas the Hitman Hearns. They will look at Lennox Lewis. They will look at these kind of guys, none of which was around Sugar Hill Steward. Sugar Hill Steward wasn't around any of those. In fact, Sugar Hill Steward didn't really walk into the gym until about 2010. Of course, Manny Steward, he died in 2012. At this point, Lennox Lewis had already retired, hadn't he? So anyway, that's my thoughts on it all. So it does add a little bit of extra element to Dillian Whyte versus Tyson Fury, which is there is that Kronk connection. There is. But as I said before, Dillian Whyte, he has more old school Kronk in his gym than Tyson Fury does. And of course, now Tyson Fury is going to be training in his hometown of Morecambe. Well, he's going to have his dad there. His dad will be interfering and messing up training camp. I guarantee you, because his dad thinks that he knows better. I guarantee he will mess certain things up. He's going to be very, very opinionated. He is. Anyway, that's my thoughts on this whole situation. Of course, you drop me yours, and I'm sure many of you will be able to point out certain things about Kronk more than what I possibly could. But if you can, great. Just drop your thoughts below about it. But as I said, will it have a bearing on the fight? It might. We'll have to wait and see. Drop your thoughts below, click thumbs up, and of course subscribe. And I'll catch you all on the next video.